first instance should be to Parliament, not that they should, that same day, come to Parliament. The problem here, what I think the Speaker has written to this committee is there does seem to be a pattern here that it is possible to provide an excuse that Parliament doesn't have to be sitting at that minute, and therefore you can give a statement in whatever format you want, rather than waiting until the House is in session, which surely has always been the case, particularly back in the days when we were longer or later operating hours, that you would be waiting the whole way through the day in order to make that first statement, but they were following that principle at the time. On your point in terms of the changing media environment, I fully accept that. I mean, we've been asked to look into this, and actually one of the questions that I think needs to be added is, do we just feel that this convention is a convention whose time no longer operates? But so long as it is operating, surely there is an expectation that ministers will follow it, regardless of how inconvenient it might be for the media narrative.
Look, I mean, obviously there are lots of sort of subject. When Parliament is in session, the most important announcements of government policy should be made in the House, in the first instance to Parliament. And there are quite a few subjective words in that. That's just all I would just be clear. I think it's, you've got to also strike the balance between big reports.
First of all, it says first.
Yeah.
And when it says the House is in session, which is different from when the House is sitting. The session was, if you take the SDR, we were still in the parliamentary session.
We were actually in recess.
Fuck. Yeah, because recess finished. Coming back on
finished finished at 3:30. And
the SDR was not time sensitive.
But we can come on to the SDR if you I'm sure we will. I think there's several things to unpack here. So let's just unpack a few of them. Can we do better? Yes, we can. Are we doing better than the previous government? Absolutely, we are. And I think that's just really important to make this point here.
You accuse me of saying this as a Conservative.
Yeah.
Lord President, two wrongs don't make a right. And we're looking at the behaviour of this government in this Parliament.
I'm just saying, as a trajectory of improvement, this is not a trajectory that's going backwards. This is now a trajectory that's going upwards. So we have made 192 oral statements to the House in 170 sitting days. That is more than one a day. We've also tabled over 800 written ministerial statements. In the last session, the government made 72 oral statements in a year, over 101 sitting days. So, way less than one a day. So what I'm saying is it's a trajectory that's going upwards because it's something that we take incredibly seriously.
All new governments coming in, particularly when there's been a change of party, have more things to announce because it's a brand new legislative. So
we've also
I'm not entirely sure we need to compare apples and oranges.
Well, I think it's an important comparison. I mean, I think if you look back over that whole session, because actually also what's changed over time, I'm sure you'll agree with this, is actually the expectation about oral statements, the use of urgent questions, which even when I first was elected 12 years ago was very rare, and the use of urgent questions has now become much more part of the norm. And there's a bigger question there about which the Modernisation Committee is actually looking at, which I chair, which is about the use of parliamentary time in the day and balancing all those pressures, because actually I speak to colleagues and they would they like to participate more actually in statements and urgent questions sometimes than in big debates on legislation. Are we always getting the balance? Are we always getting the balance of that right? Should statements come at a different point in the day and so on? Because there is much more demand on it, and the use of urgent questions has gone up. But I've also made sure.
Well, President, sorry, I just want to.
Just conclude my
we want to,
point.
And then Mr. Taylor, just on this point, and then I will come to John.
And I do take the point about pastoral evidence. I suppose it's useful for us in considering this to consider whether or not the general trajectory is such that the convention should be adjusted in the future based upon if every government's struggling with this. But we've heard the figure, the ratio of announcements made to the House. It's been put to us a number of times and to Parliament in explaining the government not making announcements to the House. The Ministerial Code doesn't specify a ratio that should be made to the House. It specifies that all major announcements should be made to the House. So the overall number of announcements made is not relevant.
It doesn't say all. It doesn't say all. It says the most important, which is obviously a a decision that's made, a collective decision that's made every day and every week.
The statistic which would be relevant here would be the most important announcements. What proportion of those have been made to the House?
Yep.
But the point is the figure is not relevant here. The point is that there have been repeated breaches of announcements being made that are significant at times when it really should have gone to Parliament and Parliament was available for those announcements to be made.
Such as?
I think that anyone would have felt the strategic events review, particularly given the level of briefing and the fact that journalists appear to receive all the information in relation to it prior to Parliament, that is a fairly significant breach of parliamentary privilege.
The point here is about the first instance, and I'm slightly frustrated that you seem to suggest that looking into the Ministerial Code, which is the subject of this question about this particular issue of the first instance, and I admire the attempt to obfuscate and to divert away and talk about numbers and totals, but can we just be really clear that what we're talking about is the announcement of information first to parliamentarians, and in answers going forward that we focus on that particular issue, please?
Yeah, I think it's actually, I think it's very important to set the context of a trajectory going upwards, of a government that takes these matters seriously
That's not
and
the
demonstrated.